you got that mute going on. You got that mute going on. Everybody, welcome back to Power 97.5 LA, iHeart Radio, Power B 97.5 Vegas, iGlobal Media, the JS Journals, all of the things. I mean, I'm just saying. I'm excited about this conversation today because I got to meet this absolutely creative at a film festival, and we weren't even supposed to be interviewing him. He was so dope. He brought his friends over to make sure that we interviewed them, and he was also being interviewed by all of us. And I just really want to first and foremost just say thank you for all the work that you have done, the work that you're doing, and also just, I got ears on in the streets and on the streets, and everyone has said the same thing about you is that you are such a great person. You are an amazing actor. You are a great producer, a director, an acting coach. You co-ran, a festival in Orlando and all of the things. We do our research, but moreover, they all say the same thing. And you said this about yourself. Once you put the work out there, you don't go back and look at it. Chris said, absolutely not. This is what we're doing. Everybody put your hands together for Chris Greene is in the building.
I appreciate it, man. You looking fly as always, man. Listen, every time I see your stories, man, you dripped out, bro. I love it. I love it.
Oh, listen, I throw a little stank on it here and there, but I want to start. I want to start with you because you really have an amazing story and just all of the things from your origin stories and being a Mount Vernon kid and all of the things. We're gonna go over all of the things. Listen, we do our homework, Chris.
I
We do our
see.
thing.
Listen, damn. Okay.
But what I want to start with as we're closing out 2025 and 2026, right? How has the year been for you? And what are you looking forward to, if anything, for 2026?
Um, that was a hell of an intro, but I'm gonna keep it all the way funky with you, man.
Please, please. That's what we
It's
do.
been it's been a it's been a rough year. I
Yeah.
mean, for a lot of people, as far as industry wise,
Yeah.
personally, it's been a lot of up and downs. Mostly due to me just trying to go a different way, have a different path about doing things, and trying different journeys. Just as a man, getting older,
Yeah.
and not ashamed to say it. I'm in my 40s,
Shout
so
out to, shout out to 40. Me too. I'm in
yeah,
the
there
40
you
club
go.
looking
There you
fly.
go.
Listen,
That's what I'm saying. We do a little
the,
something,
the
something,
40 is the new
man.
40.
You
So
know, you know, you know what I mean? Absolutely. And you know, we're blessed to see that, man. A cat that I went to college with recently put on his Facebook. Shout out to B Dot.
what's up?
Well known person, radio personality, man. Been doing the game for a long
Absolutely.
time. We
Yeah.
went to Salem State University together. Shout out
About
Rams.
to say shout out to WSSU. I went to
Yeah.
A&T. We're about to
Oh,
go through some
oh
things.
man. Oh man.
You was
Listen.
right down the block.
You know what I mean? Yeah, you'll get a little pass. I like A&T. You get a little pass. We have a
We
little
talk
thing.
about top schools and WSSU's not really on those top
Listen,
five.
I
But
ain't mad at
it
you.
is what it is.
I ain't mad at you.
I got a lot of friends that went to WSSU and
There you
played
go.
all of the things. However, we
However,
always told them, come on back down the street.
you right. Listen, I ain't mad. I ain't mad at that at all, man. I had some nice time in G Borough. You know what I'm saying? Do a little stuff here and there. You know what I mean? We need to, but yeah, B Dot has said on his story. I think it was the beginning of the year, man. He had his birthday, not beginning of the year, but earlier in the year. He had his birthday, and I guess one of the youngins had told him he was getting old. You
Not the
know,
not the YNs.
Yeah, the YNs and let him know. And then he had to think about it before he was like, I was thinking about I was gonna, have a reaction. And he was like, we're fortunate to get to that age, man. A lot of people, unfortunately, are for one, if they make it to where we at, health issues. And if
Yeah,
they don't, make it to where we at, then it's a thing of, back in the day when we 15, 16, you look at 40, 50, like, oh, that's old. And then we
absolutely.
get here, you're like, oh, that's really young,
It
actually
is.
you know. So it's just going through those different journeys, man, and mindsets and trying to be better with myself and be just a better person, you know what I mean? And also just being a girl dad, man. My daughter just turned
You are.
15, and let me tell you something, man. It's rough, brother.
It's
And not
rough.
yeah, and not in a bad way, not in a bad way. It's more me learning I have to have more patience. I have to have more of an understanding. This is a young woman now. And, in a sense of, her body changing and
Mhm.
discovering things and I have to be more conscious of the things I say and do because I don't want her to feel as though she can't come to me
Yeah,
to have a conversation or say anything.
yeah,
So it's a lot of that, man, as far as what I mean by the year was rough, just as far as mentally and emotionally discovering myself and learning more things. Physically, I'd injured my shoulder at the beginning of the year, so I'm not feeling very confident in myself because I'm not able to
you
hit the
look
gym.
good, Chris. You
Oh, I
look good.
appreciate it. I
Oh, stop
appreciate
beating
it.
yourself. Stop beating
I
yourself up.
appreciate it.
No,
Nah, yeah, I appreciate it. Listen, don't get it twisted. Brother still fly. I still go in there
listen.
and do what
Tell
I
the
gotta
people we
do.
outside,
You know what I
man. We
mean? You know what I
outside.
mean?
Look,
You know
look,
what I
and
mean?
I do want to say something. I do want to take my hat off to you and all of the parents, and I know I make a lot of jokes, but it's the truth because I think about. I was invited. Paramount invited me to the SpongeBob screening, and it was
Right.
very interesting because I always have to remember, even though I'm an adult and I like SpongeBob and things like that, 98% of the audience were all children. And y'all
Yeah.
parents, my God,
Oh, you know now, huh?
there was more candy, more popcorn, toys. And I said, not only did we get invited to the screening, Paramount wanted to give out gifts, and it was
Of
like all of the.
course.
So half of the gifts was broken all on. I said, you know what? Shout out. I kept looking at all the parents like,
Hmm.
congratulations, good luck. I'm about to head this way because I don't have kids. But listen, the beautiful thing about you though, you are from two places with very specific energies when we think of Mount Vernon and we think of Yonkers, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
Um, who were you before acting?
Uh, I was, and still am, but when I think of my younger days, I was annoying little brother. I've got four siblings. I got two older brothers, two older sisters, and they all grew up together. I came later. When my mother and father met, they were previously, married or in relationships. They split and then they met. And from my understanding, the agreement was, oh, your kids are almost grown. My kids are almost grown. We done with the kid thing. And if I'm sure but if for the youngins on here that don't know that might be listening, back in the day the technology wasn't as good as it is now as far as tying tubes.
No, not
So moms popped up pregnant. Pops was not too happy about that, but neither were my siblings because they were the ones that wound up babysitting the most.
exactly.
So yeah, so the annoying little brother, but I think that I'm grateful for that because my siblings being older gave me an understanding of being older, that young person, old
Yep,
soul, but also being
yep,
tough, man.
yeah,
I was getting my ass kicked verbally and physically just as a kid, not in a bad way, but because I'm the
yeah.
baby,
You were growing, yeah.
yeah, and you had to be tough. So, but it also made me very lonely too, because again, they were older. So, I'm still
Mm,
playing with GI Joes. They out there going on dates.
right.
So they're not gonna sit down and play GI Joe with me
Yeah.
and
No, no,
try to work
no.
out. So I had to have an active imagination, and both my parents saw that we got to do something with this guy. I mean, yeah, he has his friends at school and his homies that he's tight with, but when he's at home, he's by himself. We got to do something with this cat. So they put me into music, and I think music gave me a really good outlet. And I use it to this day when I'm prepping as an actor. Music is a very big influence. As a director, if I'm having somebody cut something up, it's very rhythmic. There's music to it, and being a drummer on top of that, there's very specific patterns that I just hone
Yeah,
into. I've been, used to that. So, this ambitious kid who's into music, and I always loved movies. I never wanted to be an actor per se, but I always used to sit there and watch movies with my pops. He had all the laser disc, VHS, DVD,
come
all
on,
that.
come on.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And it's sneaking into movies. I worked at a movie theater when I was 15, so I was constantly, even
But
after
you were
work,
around it. You
I
were
was
around.
around it all the time. It
Yeah,
just never was something that's like I want to do that. It was just like, man, this is cool how they, I love watching this and seeing how they doing this and doing all that.
yeah,
And so, and then growing up in New York, man, at that time, in late 80s, 90s, mid 90s, it was people have this perception, obviously you had, the crack epidemic and all that,
yeah.
but that was more towards really you know, the Bronx really wasn't dealing with that. Mount Vernon obviously being
Mhm.
that close proximity to that, and then you move a little bit further up, Yonkers, New Rochelle, that area, Westchester area. It wasn't that bad then. The biggest thing that we had to deal with, I think people weren't aware of was the gangs, man. It was
Yeah,
Latin Kings was up there. There's a lot of, cats on the block, not necessarily Bloods and Crips because it wasn't that big East Coast wise back then, but it was just a lot of just, cats beefing and, you wouldn't necessarily get shot up, but you would get knifed up, you would get jumped. So my mom's wasn't really keen
Yeah.
on that, but we would be out on the block riding bikes, just chilling
Yeah.
until the street lights came on, and you go back home. And so, you know, I was never really afraid to be adventurous and just go out. I think that was the
Mm-hmm.
plus about growing up in New York, and I think a lot of New Yorkers will say the same. Is we're used to walking, we're used to public
Mm-hmm.
streets, to running into people doing
Yeah.
whatever. And so I think that back then, now that I think about it, those times seemed complicated, but they were really weren't.
But
The
they
fact that
weren't. Yeah.
you could go out and you could just, hey, meet me on the block over here. We ride
Exactly.
bikes, get pizza,
Yeah.
play
Yeah.
arcade games, go, Blockbuster, whatever, and
Mm-hmm.
rent some stuff, and all that sort of things, man. And then even school. School was just to be even different. I looked
Mm-hmm.
forward to actually recess in school and certain classes, just linking up with cats. So, I think the younger me was always in a way some sort of dreamer, but I think my imagination was just so wild. I never really honed it in. And then
Yeah. It wasn't streamlined to just like one thing. Yeah.
exactly, it was just kind of like, yo, if somebody said, jumping off a roof was gonna be the dopest thing. I'm down. You know what I mean? Like that was me. It was like, yo, I'm down for anything, man. I just don't want to be in the house. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like,
Well, and that's the thing, right? I used to live in New York for 9 years, and I
okay,
say it was great being in New York and just
right,
stepping outside. And to your point, even though there were so many affiliations of the
right,
happening, right? It was still a very colorful city, and still is a colorful city to
100%.
understand culture to another magnitude. But you earned a scholarship, a musical scholarship to Winston-Salem State.
I
And
did.
huge shout out to that. Who was Chris as an artist before acting even came across in the picture during that time?
Music, I started off, I drew a little bit, I was very big into comics, more so Marvel. I mean, X-Men was my joint, X-Men. I got a little bit to DC, even though everybody's like, well, you got the Superman stuff. That's a
You're
different
like,
story.
that's a different, yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
that's a different thing. But me, it was always partial to all the Marvel joints. And then Calvin and Hobbes was a big thing. I don't know why I
Mm,
always used to love Calvin and Hobbes,
love
man,
Calvin
and
Hall.
just drawing them. And it was just like, it was something about, this kid having his imaginary friend and like that's his homeboy and
Yeah.
doing his thing. And then the music took over. I couldn't get any sounds out of any other instruments. They tried to stick me on saxophone. I wanted to play sax because of The Simpsons. I was like, oh, Lisa's playing saxophone. That sounds dope. And then listening to the blues. My father used to listen to the blues all the time.
I'm
Like,
thinking you about to say I like sax because Denzel Washington
nah,
and Mo
nah,
Better Blues
nah,
or
man,
John
nah.
Coltrane. He said Lisa from shout out to Lisa from The Simpsons. She was the boss.
Listen.
She was the boss of the whole family.
That's what I'm saying. You know
Yeah,
what I
she
mean?
was. She was.
Bart was a troublemaker. We all wanted to be Bart, but it was
We
something
did.
about,
No, Lisa,
Lisa low key had it.
Lisa and Maggie. They were the two.
Right, right, right. And so that was, a big influence. And then of course, like I said, my pops had all these blues records and jazz records. He was kind of into that thing.
Yeah,
So, listening to that. And then when Paul Bernardi, shout out Bernardi, I was going to school in Yonkers called Pearls
yeah,
and public school obviously, and but it was more on like the gifted side of like the arts and things like that. And I remember Paul Bernardi, big, Italian guy, band director, and I was so bad. And instead of kicking me out, I mean everybody had to take band, but I wasn't the kid in the back that was just gonna be like, all right, guys, good job.
right.
He put a set of drumsticks in my hand and was like, just go over there and just hit on the drums, get out of my face with this other stuff. And for some reason it took. And he was like, wow, you picking that up really naturally. And then when it got time to finish high school, I was in the jazz band, concert band, all that stuff. Went to West State, tried out for the marching band,
Yeah.
got a scholarship, and then, started majoring in music, and it took from there. But drums, for some reason, I pick up a pair of drumsticks, and
You were
it
like, I'm
worked.
home. You like
Yeah.
I'm home. But this is the thing. North Carolina School of the Arts also became a catalyst, right?
Yep.
You think
Correct.
take us into an exact moment that acting kind of like it just clicked. It was like, you know what? All right, now this is it for you for that first time. You know what?
Mhm.
I'm here. I've arrived.
Right. I think the bug bit me on Chicks 101, which was Lavender Gills. He was a professor there at the time. I don't know if he still
Mhm.
is. It was his thesis he was doing with his students, his grad students. And, I got on that set and saw how they built out it was like a Dollar General or something, but it was abandoned, and they built this joint out to be a functioning club. I've told that story, but now that you asked me that, really when it took hold, I think that's what sparked my attention. Like
Okay.
that was the match,
Yeah.
but the match when that match got held to the flame was when I booked my first short film through School of Arts, and it was a 2 minute short film. And it was one of those things where like the world is ending, and you're this homeless guy, and you find a young man, and you find this kid, and this kid's about to die, and you go to save him, and the kid's like telling you basically, hey, it's the end of the world, where are we gonna go? And you just sit there and accept the fate.
Oh
And
wow.
I think once that happened, and the director came to me and was like, man, good job, man. Like, no, seriously, that was like really good. You should, yeah, hopefully you'll do more of this.
Oh wow.
Between that and the director from Chicks 101 telling me, hey,
Hmm.
if you really want to be serious about this, you need to learn the craft, go
Hmm.
train like anything else. I think that those two moments kind of sparked and goes, all right, cool. I'm 20 years old, about to be 20 years old. If I'm gonna do this, I need to go ahead and just do it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, don't play around, don't BS, just make it happen. And I think those were the things. And I just recently reconnected with my first major acting coach, Jordan Beswick, bit well-known acting coach, 30 years plus in the game. More so, he's coached everybody, more so on the theater side, but
Yep.
he's got Tony nominee and winners under his belt and all that. Like he's the real deal.
You come here with the real deal. Yeah.
Right. Recently reconnected with him, and it was a nice heartfelt moment because he didn't realize that his words were that impactful. And he's like, dude, he's like, no, I've seen you pop up on my screen. I was just like,
Come on.
oh, man, I remember that kid from, that first workshop who couldn't remember a line. Wow, you guys got to stick with it. And but to tell him how much it was, how impactful he was, and how much it made a difference for me, because with us, man, and it's not a negative thing, but it's we keeping it a buck in our household. When back in the day, when you're a black kid and you growing up,
Hmm.
you tell
Hmm.
your family, I want to be in the NBA or NFL, or you tell your family, I want to play tennis, or I'm gonna be, a doctor, whatever.
Hmm.
All right, baby. Well, you got to work hard. You got to work
Right.
hard, right? And the
Right.
moment you say, I'm gonna be an actor, I'm gonna be a radio host, I'm gonna be, all right. Well, what's your real job gonna
What's
be?
your real job? What's
Right.
gonna bring in the money?
Right. And people don't realize, man, our parents are our heroes in most cases.
Yeah.
When you have your hero telling you bring it down, it brings you down. And so having him be the first one to go, okay, if that's what you want to do, cool, but don't treat it different than any other profession. If you was
That
going to
part.
be a doctor, you take your ass to school, you learn, you
Absolutely.
understand this is what you live and breathe. If
Yep.
you want to do this thing as far as acting or being a storyteller, this is what you got to do, man.
That's what you got to do. And I think there's so many people that don't hear that though, right? I had
Right.
that
Right.
conversation at a festival a couple of weeks ago, and everyone's like, Jameer, you're outside. You always are
Right.
connecting with people, and I am.
Yeah.
But also, I like to be outside connecting and building relationships because that's really what it's about, right? I think sometimes we look at the trajectory of our careers and we're like, that's going to sustain us. But
Right.
sometimes it really is the people that we know. But there are times that I want to take us back, right? When you think of Chicks 101, what
Mm.
do you remember about that first set, right? The smells and the energy, the internal doubt that you were experiencing, and kind of like that spark, what was that moment like?
It was, I think for anyone, it was that first time seeing, and they shot this on film, so this wasn't digital.
Wow.
This is 2002 or three, somewhere in there. So they were still had digital around, but it wasn't where it is now.
Yeah.
So they're on film cameras and watching the dolly grip push the dolly, and the cam op sitting on there, and they're elevating up and they're moving in for the shot, and I'm sitting here like,
Oof.
man, that's like wow. Like this, I see this on the behind the scenes stuff on DVDs. Like I'm actually seeing it now. This is crazy. And it's having that reaction of, yo, this is how they do this. All right,
Yeah.
cool. It had very much that club atmosphere to the point to where, like I said, people were pulling up like, yo, this is a new club. What time they open? Like, nah, we're filming a
Yeah,
movie.
like actually we're just filming. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But shout out to the students there. They did such a great
Right.
job. And I think, the thing that stands out the most, and again, I've said this before, is the director, being a standout for the right reasons. And
Yeah.
I teach my students this. I'm like, listen, if you're in the background, don't be in the background. Hey, pick me, pick me, pick me. Don't do that. It's something about energy that you have to acknowledge. Like even meeting you, I got across, saw you standing there and I look and we made that eye contact. I was like, yo, this brother doing interviews. Boom. You know what I
Oh,
mean? But the energy was there. Like you didn't have this presence of like, I don't know who you are, get the hell away from me. It was very much like, what's up? You know what I mean? I'm like, hey,
exactly.
shh,
Yeah.
let's make it happen. And that's how it was with that director. He looked at me and he saw the outfit I had on, and we just kind of locked eyes. And he was like, "You come here,"
See.
And that I think that feeling was like, "All right, cool. I'm a new Jack in the game." It's like the Tom Brady moment. It's like
Mm,
you're on the bench and like, man, I'm just here. I'm gonna be ready, but
I'm gonna be
man,
ready,
this
but
quarter,
y'all.
Bledsoe ain't going down. Like, they
Yeah.
got a
Yeah.
quarterback.
Yeah.
And then the moment it happens, it's like, yo, you come here. All of a sudden you're now the person they go to. And it's like, all
Mm-hmm.
right, but you saw he was ready. And that's the thing I tell everybody else is, you may only do co-stars the rest of your career. You may only do guest stars the rest of
Mm-hmm.
you may not be number one on the call sheet,
Yep.
but that day gonna come where they gotta go, oh, this person backed out. Can you step up and see what you can do? And then you do it, and it's like,
Where have you been?
damn. Right. And it's like, I've been right here. Why you ain't been looking? You know what I mean? So it's that sort of thing when I think about Chicks One-on-One to think about 2002, 2003 and go 20 years later and go, I've literally run the gamut, which is rare
You
nowadays.
have. You
I've
have.
I've I've been in the background. I've done the extra work. I've done the industrial. I've done all that to go to,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
working independent film, being a one to call shit an independent film,
Yeah.
and it's and
You've
it's
done the work. You've
I've
put
done
in
the
the
work,
work.
right? And
Yeah.
it's one of those things to where, and I'm glad that you asked these questions, man, because it makes you, and this way it does humble you because we get so focused into the next
Mm-hmm.
level, next level, next level that we forget, all right, bro, you feel like you're this far from the next level, but you're also that far from when you started. And you don't think about that because you're just like, man, but I'm tired of Michael B. Jordan taking on, let me knock this dude out the spot. You know what I mean? But then you're like, there's some actor who was background on one of the sets you were just on,
Yeah.
looking at you and going, I'm trying to get where Chris Greene is at. And you don't think
Absolutely.
about that. You know
Well,
what I
and this is the
mean?
thing. There's been a lot of Michael B. Jordans that have been in those positions, and I think we have to acknowledge how far people have gone, right? And
Mhm.
I think it's a lot of memes on TikTok and Instagram that they'll say, look at where you are today, and look where you were 5 years ago, right? And look at the dreams
Mhm.
that you prayed for, and now look at where you're at, And so for me, I know I always constantly make sure that I acknowledge the space that I'm sitting in, the people and the connections that I've made, but also the growth, the challenges, the mistakes, the wins, the awards, all the things matter and mean something, right? But
Right,
you've done great when you think of your craft, when you think of the training, but also the long game. And you
right,
thought that way, right?
right.
20 years of training is not just kind of common anymore. When you think of that, it's people want that clickable fast result. And for you,
Yes.
and you talk about your students and all of the things, what does training mean for you?
To me, it's everything. If you think about the essence of human beings, we're in my opinion, not to get like into no crazy theology or anything like that, but I think human beings were born to train. And what
Yeah.
I mean by that is think about it from the time you come out and enter into this world, into this universe,
Mhm.
you are being taught, which means you have to train. You are being shown how to do something, and training, the essence of training is repetition. So, for example, you're being taught how to use you discover your fingers, but then your parents go, "This is how you grab. This is how you
Yeah.
point. This is
Yeah.
how you say, how you wave."
Yeah.
Your feet, you discover your toes, but then they're like, "Oh, all right, this is how you walk." They're training us to walk. Then they're training us to crawl, to walk, to run, to use these words, this grammar that we learn, these letters, and learn phonetics and learn these words and have this rhetoric and all this other stuff. We're constantly training to evolve and be better.
Hmm.
And so I always think it's funny when I hear actors say I don't need to train anymore because I'm like, if your parents had that mentality, you would still be crawling. You wouldn't know
Yeah.
how to walk because you were taught how to work and you had to work at that. You
Yeah.
were taught how to eat and you had to work at that. You were taught how to, well, some people were taught how to listen.
Some
Some
people.
people weren't.
Right.
Yeah. So training is everything to me, man, when it comes to the industry. That's why I still do it. You cannot. in my opinion, you cannot be a storyteller if you don't understand story structure. And the only way to understand that is to continue to train with it, which is why you have so many people, fan out for a minute. Like Dave Chappelle, I think obviously everybody has him up there as one of the GOATs, but if you
Yeah.
really break down his jokes, the man understands story structure. The way
Hmm.
he sets stuff up and tells a story and brings you right back to the punchline is uncanny. The only person I've seen come even remotely close, and he's a North Carolinian, obviously, but I've seen Ryan Davis in person 3 times
Shout out
perform.
to Ryan Davis. Yeah.
Ryan Davis, I don't care what nobody says. If his Instagram that's child's play.
Yeah.
Go watch this guy in person. He's the only person I've seen come close to do what Chappelle does as far as telling a story and then
Wow.
bringing you back into the joke. And it's crazy. And I tell him this all the time. I'm not, this ain't when I shout people out, I tell people all the time, like I don't do when I'm a fan of somebody, I'm not ashamed about that. I let them know
No.
whether they
Yeah.
rock with me or not. I don't care. Like,
Yeah.
yo, you could be a mean person or, an ass or whatever, but that doesn't negate the fact that you're still dope at what you do. And I respect
Absolutely.
that. And
Absolutely.
and so to me, that's training. Like you hear Ryan talk about that. He's like, man, this is what I do. When I decided to do comedy, like I'm a student of comedy.
Hmm.
This is what I do. Dave's the same way. He talks about studying
Hmm.
MD and Pryor and all these people. And so I'm the same way. When I study actors, shout out. I mean, the goats come from where I'm from, Mount Vernon.
Absolutely.
Denzel is by far, I don't care who you are, considered one of the greatest actors of several generations.
Yeah.
And when I'm watching him on screen, it is very effortless, but you understand this man continues to study. He continues to
Absolutely.
read. He continues to
Absolutely.
to talk to people, understand story. It's like that. That's why he's so damn good at what it is. And all these, you know, elder statesmen, I'll call them these seasoned veterans that I've had the pleasure of working with, they all say the same thing. They're like, yo, man, even if you're not booking on anything, take your ass to a regional theater, get in a
Please.
class because it is what we do is no different than what an athlete does.
Yeah.
If a professional athlete, think about that, off season, if somebody from any football team, any basketball team, hockey team, whatever, off season, if they never picked up a pair of hockey skates, they never picked up a
Not gonna,
basketball, a bat, and then went back at the start of the season, try to play,
not gonna be
injuries,
ready.
trash, you know what I'm
Yep.
saying?
Yep.
They constantly have to keep working that muscle or it's going to atrophy. It is the same exact thing for us, man. And that's why some of the actors, and you've interviewed a lot of them, a lot of the
Yeah.
actors you've interviewed that are dope and doing what they do, and people are shocked how they're so good. They're like, this is what I do. I
This
love
is
what I
what they
do.
do, and they love what they do.
Yeah.
But I think also to your point, I remember watching. This is not a plug, but I always like to shout out Reginald Hudson for what he did with First Name on the Call Sheet and all of the
Mhm,
people that are on
mhm.
there and those conversations. And I remember going to the screening and having conversations that were off camera and just really
Mhm.
personal conversations with actors. And I always like to shout you guys out because it is a very grueling space and trying and wanting to book and self tape and
Right,
audition and audition and audition. And you hear that a lot. And so many people are just like, when is it my time?
right,
Right. For
right.
you, though, how do you protect from the mental and the financial and the emotional turbulence, um, really, of the industry?
Damn, man, oh, and this is why you're that guy when it comes to this stuff. You definitely doing your work with this one. I think the mental aspect has never really bothered me. Again, older siblings, maybe
Yeah,
growing up in New York, whatever. It's frustrating. Don't get it twisted. But I don't think I've been that person that's been to a point. Every actor has quit at one point. Man, this
of course. Yeah.
industry, I hate this. But I've not gotten to the point where it was so stressful. The industry was so stressful mentally that it was just like, I'm gonna jump off this roof. I think it's more, okay, I gotta find something else to do. Like that motivates me. Okay,
Yeah.
you're not gonna pay attention to me. I'm gonna go make you pay attention to me. Now I'm gonna go do this, and you're gonna have to pay attention to me. And I think the hardest part of the other two that you mentioned, for me, the harder part is the financial and emotional stress.
Okay.
Because especially being a parent, it's you always want to take care of your child and give them a better life than you had, and so it's hard to do, especially nowadays in this industry. Financially, it's very tough with all the
Yeah.
stuff that's going on. That's why actors are becoming producers also and directors and editors.
Right.
You can't just it's those days of making a living as an actor, in my opinion, are over. Just as an actor is over.
Very true.
You have to do other stuff. You have to become a brand ambassador and do all this other stuff. So it becomes taxing emotionally because you constantly have to be on, I guess, in a way, if you want to have that. And I think the finances are, unfortunately, man, our industry is just technology is always going to evolve, and I know there's a gripe about AI and all this stuff, but they're not using it as a tool, they're using it as the tool.
B2.
And
Yeah.
they're trying to use that, and it's like this is going to replace everything. It's like, no, man. People keep telling you, like, the more people watch these AI videos, the more they go, now I understand why everybody was griping like this is trash.
Yeah.
Like, this is cool for like a concept,
Of
but I
course,
want to see real people.
the human factor still has to
The
be there.
human factor has to be there. And so, for me, I think financially and just the world in general in turmoil. I mean, look, at the end of the day, it's not a secret. I don't care what your politics are. We got a, excuse my language, but we got a shitty human being at the top of the seat. You know what I mean? Like this, just in general, just a bad person. I don't care what your politics are, what your agreement are. You cannot, nobody in their right mind can say that this person is of sound mind. Like it's just not possible. And when you have somebody in position like that, it gives others who think that way that entitlement to come out and be that same way. And I think structurally, as a country, I feel like we've just gotten too dependent on certain things, which in a way has made us lazy, you know.
Mm,
And that is a problem because when people get lazy, they don't get motivated. And when they're not motivated, they just sit around and wait for things to happen.
yeah.
And that's not a good thing,
It's
especially
not
in our
good
industry.
at all. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's the financial struggles. I think, you always just have to have, just like I was told, have rich family members or have a backup plan. But I think mentally, if you keep yourself busy,
Yeah.
right? Surround yourself with good people,
Yep.
which is hard, but surround yourself with good people and keep yourself busy and just live life. You won't be sitting by the phone waiting, was my agent gonna call, my agent gonna call, my agent gonna call. Time, you're gonna be so busy doing something else that time that felt like 8 months in between auditions was really only three.
That's it.
And then the phone rings you, oh no, I got an audition. Now I can focus on that and do what I gotta
Yeah.
do. So
Yeah.
I think that's just for me how I handle it. And I think it's something that, will get easier as you climb because you become more creative and we have the tools to create and do other things. But for me, the jobs that I would like to have and the things I want to do and the shows I want to work on, they still require dope actors
They
and
do.
people that are trained. And
Yeah.
it's just like, man, like Landman is one. I love Landman. I love what Taylor Sheridan's doing with his
No.
series. And I
Yeah.
would, I have I just had an actress friend of mine, shout out Diana Rincon, who just popped up on the show.
Right.
And I'm like, man, I gotta get on the show, bro. Like they have real actors. There's no BS. Like they have real actors on the show. So it's just, motivation when you see people pop up to go, all right, I gotta stay the course. I gotta be on it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And keep myself busy. So yeah, that's how I deal with it at least. It's just, watching others that inspire and stay motivated.
14 years ago until today, um, what has your daughter taught you about being a good father?
Vulnerability,
Mm,
being able to not be so hardened. I think it's just as men, especially as black men, we've been groomed to be hardened because of the things we had to do. I told someone recently, a woman of color, who's also in the industry, they were stressed about something and we were just having a conversation. And then naturally went into just being, black and brown people in this world and the stuff we have to deal with.
yeah.
And, you know, whether it's right or wrong, it just was on my heart to say. Normally I wouldn't say it, but it was on my heart to say. And I said, I want to give you your kudos, and I'll say it on here. I want to give kudos to every black and brown woman that I know because in today's world, I feel like as black and brown men, we physically carry the weight of the world. Like
Mm,
that's what we do, and that's hard as hell. Don't get it
yeah.
twisted. But I think black and brown women, in particular black women, carry the mental and emotional weight of the world, and that by far is heavier than anything we could ever carry.
Yeah.
And they appreciated that when I told her that they wanted to send me this nice message and how, the emotional they got over that and appreciate that. And I think that right there came from honestly my daughter because prior to her being born, like that probably would have never come out of my mouth
I love it.
because, I just wasn't emotionally tapped in like that. And I've told
Hmm.
every actor I know, every brother I know that's had a child, I was like, your acting is gonna go from here to here.
Yeah.
Because especially if you have a little girl.
Right,
Because
right.
I'm like, they don't care what kind of day you had,
Mm-mm.
they still come in and expect that kind of love and
That
affection.
love and affection. Yeah.
And you gotta give it, not because you're required, but because they make you want to do that because
Hmm.
they let you know how much they appreciate you. And so she makes me better every day. And like I've told people before, and I've told the story, she's not only figuratively, but literally saved my life. If my daughter wasn't here, I don't think I'd still be here because that was a point in time in my life where it was just kind of like nothing was going right.
Hmm.
Nothing was going right. And it's like no matter what I did, like if I got up in the morning and rolled out of the bed, I would have broke my arm just for getting up out of like it was just
Wow.
everything was against me.
Okay.
And I was like, you know what? How about this? I'm just not gonna get out of bed. It solves that problem.
Mm.
And finding out that I was gonna be a father was like, yo, you gotta man up because the baby didn't ask for that. At the time I didn't know it was gonna be a girl, obviously, but the baby didn't ask for this.
Yeah.
So you better get your stuff together, man, and get right. And
Chris, listen, I'm happy you got out of bed. I'm
yeah,
happy you got up. I think we're all
thank you.
happy that you got up, right?
Thank you. Thank you. Oh,
Um,
I am now too, even though, she's, Daddy, I gotta get this, Daddy, I gotta get that,
right.
basically.
Money,
I'm like,
money, money. Listen, everybody know Chris. Listen, Chris got the money, y'all. Don't let him sleep on you. I want to get into some. I want to get
Hey,
into
hey,
some
hold on.
questions.
I'm putting that out there. I'm putting
I want to
that
get into some. I want to get into some Q&A because when people know that we have actors, working
Yes.
actors, people that really spend the time coaching and training, the
Mhm.
questions kind of flow. And the first question actually comes from Christopher. His name is
Oh, nice.
Christopher. Christopher is out of where is this? He is out of Atlanta, Georgia. Christopher says,
Hey.
how did faith, intention, or wellness play a role in your survival in Hollywood?
Oof. Good question, man. Good name too, by the way. Um, um, wellness is priority. Your body is your tool, man. If you're going to be in this industry, take care of yourself.
Yeah.
We lost too many actors to, unfortunately, maybe substance or lack of taking care of themselves.
Mhm.
Substance abuse and lack of taking care of themselves.
Yeah.
Even if you get out and go for a walk, man,
That's it.
you'll be amazed at how much I do. Do some push-ups, go for a walk, do some sit-ups. Try your best to eat healthy. Look, we all know it's rough. We in this industry, we don't know. It's rough. Do your best, but take care of yourself, man, because if you don't take care of yourself, you don't have the ability to tell a story or perform a story
Yeah.
at your best, at least physically. Intention have that intention, man. People do vision boards. I don't necessarily do that. I do more of, I think words are power. So I do more of affirmations, right? Speak it into yourself, man. I'm gonna be this series lead. I'm gonna be this. I'm gonna meet this person. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna
Mhm.
go here.
Mhm.
Because once you put it out there, the universe has a way of, you know, bringing that energy to you. Like, all right, you said you was gonna do it, and it works both ways, good and bad. And I'm still
Yeah.
learning that. It works both ways, good and positive and negative words. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, this is what you asked for. So, you
You're
don't
ready.
realize it, but you're moving towards that. And as far as faith, I've gotten back in touch more with my faith over the last year or so. Just like I said, understanding myself more and surrounding myself with more spiritual people and faith, based people and trying to be better with that. But after losing my best friend and my father in the same year at 19, and then a couple of things that would happen after that, my faith kind of waned. I
Yeah.
always had my belief, but my faith was like, man, you know what? Nobody's looking out for me. Like,
Yeah.
God's not looking out for me because why am I going through this? And you don't realize, obviously, sometimes you got to get older
You
to
do.
understand, okay, this is what you're being set up for.
Yeah. This is what I was supposed to learn. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So that's how they've helped me as far as Hollywood and stick to your guns, man. Stick to your morals because this industry will try to change you. And I
Oh,
know
it
you know
will.
that. This industry will try to
Oh,
mess
it
you
will.
up.
Oh, it will.
Yeah.
Nicole out of Houston. She says, "What is something a younger Chris wouldn't have accepted?"
Mm.
I love the.
Vulnerability.
Mm.
Younger Chris would have been like, nah, you got to man up. You can't be, vulnerable in front of these people. You gotta be, who's this cast director talking to? I've gotten in it with cast directors, you know what I mean? Like, who you think you are? I'm that younger Chris was on that.
Yeah.
Older Chris now is kind of like, well, that's your loss. You don't want to deal with me.
I
All
don't
right,
have
good luck.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
good luck finding somebody else. I'm gonna
exactly.
be over here. So
Yeah.
I think that's the difference. Younger Chris was just a little bit more on 10. You know what I mean? Older Chris has got more responsibilities now, so
It's
he's
like
more
we
involved.
got stuff to lose. So
Yeah,
I want to talk about the work, the roles, and the responsibility. And when
gotcha.
I think of just all of the things that you have done, Queen of the South, Atlanta,
Mhm.
a lot of the historically black films, Loving and Birth of a Nation, I think that you've done some beautiful work. When you think of Queen of the South, how did you approach the character? Right? How did you approach the character internally and not just a performance, but also within the mindset?
Bobby was to me, Bobby Leroy was he's a number two, man. He's a lieutenant.
Yeah.
And like any number two, any lieutenant, he he wants the number one spot,
Mm,
but in Bobby's case, to me, it wasn't like I'm gonna take this cat out.
okay.
Like it reminds me of, you know, Alan Payne and Wesley Snipes, right? New Jack, right? New
Mhm.
Jack City. It's like, you know, he would have done anything for Nino, man. He would have done
Yep.
anything for Nino. And it wasn't like I want Nino's spot. It it was a little subtle hint of that, but it was
It
like,
was. Yeah.
but it was like it wasn't, I'm gonna take, Susie slipping him. You know what I mean? Like it was kind of like if something happens, I'm not gonna stop it so I can take the spot. But
Don't really want to be in full charge.
I don't want to be, yeah, fully in charge of that. And that's kind of how I looked at Bobby was kind of like, yo, if Marcel steps down, I already know I'm secure for the guy. And if I'm not, then I'm gonna rain hellfire on this.
Right. Right.
And I think, but he's also a type of person to where for him being in charge is not, at least I didn't view it that way. It wasn't him being in charge as an ego thing, like I'm the man, I'm in charge. It was more of a showy thing, like, yeah, girl, you know who I am? Like, yeah, shut that down, shut that down. Right? That Bobby was a little bit more flashy in that way.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
see the difference, excuse me, in between him and Marcel in that opening scene where I bring the food in the
Listen,
G-Wagon
I
and,
was
and
like,
shout out to Ali, shout out to Alimi Ballard, man. He was like that was an improvised line. That wasn't even scripted.
and those are
If
some
you
of the
ever
best.
see me eat
Some
in
of the
my
best.
car,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that hit because we've all been like,
We've
especially when I
all
was
been
black,
there.
and it's a new car and it's a black car too, black
You be
person
like,
car.
hold on.
Nah, you know,
Right.
nah, we not eating, especially
We're
something
not doing that.
sloppy
Go
like
sit
that.
on the curb. Don't do that.
Right. You
Right.
know what I mean? And so having that reaction, it was like having him say that and then having that reaction, like, yeah, I mean, we just got to detail you right. But then right back into what do you know about these people? And back to business, like, nah, they legit, they on this, they on that. We have that big brother, little brother thing, and that's what I wanted to play into. So Bobby to me was the type of character that I would 100% play again, where he was loyal, rightfully so. But at the same time, he ain't no punk about his. Like I
He
don't, I
wasn't.
don't, I
Yeah.
don't care who it is. I'll be out here by myself, and that's why I love that. Shout out to the production staff and Ben Lobato and Daylin Rodriguez who were showrunners. When the episode where I get murked, it wasn't like they made him soft, like
Yeah.
please, please, please. It was kind of this thing of like you saw that, and then you realize he's buying time.
Exactly.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And it's like, because he's that type of dude. Like, I'm always playing chess, and even if I don't get out of here, I'm not going to give them
I'm not going to
anything
give them the benefit at all.
that they can use for
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, that was great, man. I had a great experience on the shoot.
Donald Glover's Atlanta is one of his own universe. It is really one of its own universe. What conversation or moments, right, on set kind of changed the way you saw creativity in Atlanta?
Donald is, and first off, grateful and I'm glad he shared the story because it's a reminder for all of us to, especially fellas, man, to take care of yourselves. I'm
Yeah,
glad that he's healthy and he shared that experience because that's scary right there.
it is.
To,
Yeah.
to know that he was working so hard is like he didn't have time to check that out.
Yep.
Um, that being said, Donald was truly a Renaissance man. It got to the point where it was upsetting me. Like
Yeah.
there's nothing that he can't do creatively, and that let me know to step my game up. He was on set drawing. I was like, all right, you draw. He was rapping, obviously, he was going through it. He started singing. I was just like, you direct and you act too. Hey, check this out. Let me
Yeah.
find out that you paint and I'm gonna punch you in your face. You know what I mean? Like it was
Like
like
you got too much going on. There's too many things happening.
it's like,
Is this
listen, we
all I
already
got
got
going on?
Jamie Foxx. You know what I'm saying? We don't
Yeah, just
need
give me
you.
this.
Listen,
Yeah,
you know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, but on the real, like it let me know that one trick pony ain't gonna fly anymore. Like, you
No,
got cats out here
no.
creatively that literally can do anything. It was kind of like Bo Jackson. People were tripping like, yo, he can play baseball, basketball. What can't he do? You know what I mean? It's that sort of thing in the industry now. So I
Yeah,
was like, yo, I gotta learn different things, man. I gotta take up, different avenues creative wise. And even if I'm not great at them, at least that will help me hopefully be a
yeah.
great actor. So that's what I learned on that set was like, yo, man, take chances and just be
Mhm.
creative. That was the set that kind of got me back into up until that point. It was being very serious and gotta book the job. And
Yeah,
working on that, Donald was just so chill, like, yo, man, just do this and have fun. If it worked, cool, we'll do something else. If we don't, we'll do something else if it don't work.
he's like, just be present. Yeah,
That's it. That's it.
that's
That's
it.
it.
When you think of Loving and Birth of a Nation,
Mhm.
how did you prepare emotionally, really emotionally, to enter those worlds? Because those are both deep.
Yeah. I'm gonna be again fully honest. I didn't The preparation came after I got the role. And I'll say that because
Mm.
I didn't realize how heavy these stories were
Oof.
until I got on these actual locations where these places existed. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? For example, Birth of a Nation. I was familiar, I've heard the name Nat Turner, but going to an HBCU and
Hmm.
not knowing, I learned more spending that month on that set. I learned more about Nat Turner and that revolt and that history and the history behind Southampton County in Virginia and all the rebellions and how they were able to communicate and Nat was able to forge that, which sparked other rebellions.
Yeah. Yeah.
I learned more in that month being on that set than I did, in my years in college at state. And that's not a knock on what some state. It's just you see how much they try to shelter from us,
Absolutely.
you
Yeah.
know. And I was like, okay, wow, I don't know my history. I guess I better learn. And that helped me prepare for this character even more,
Hmm.
as far as what they had to deal with and things they had to deal with. And let me tell you something. I don't think I think the best education that our young ones can have, and I want to take my daughter there now that she's older. Um, the plantation that we shot on in Savannah was an actual plantation.
Yeah.
I mean, when I say like well over 50, 60, 70 acres,
Wow.
you don't realize how big that is until you step foot on it and you look out and see, okay, well, they had these quarters. Why didn't they just run? Well, when you look to your west, you have nothing but
Big.
grass, gravel roads.
Yes.
There's no tree line to
Hmm.
cover you
Hmm.
for at least three football fields.
Open.
So,
Yep.
right. So first, if you go in the day, you're gonna dehydrate. You're probably gonna have the exhaustion pass out. They're gonna get you anyway. You go
Absolutely.
at night, it's too cold, and on top of that, the moonlight is lighting all that because there's nothing to cover you out
Literally.
there. If you look to the east, it's the Georgia River. Like, it's the ocean. It's the Atlantic Ocean. Like, where are you going? Well, you going to swim? You got crocodiles, alligators, you got all sorts of stuff, different disease. Where are you going?
Yep.
So to me, it's like you literally had nowhere to go. You had no way to get out of there unless you were willing to just risk your life and,
Yep.
and escape. And even then, most of them, they had families. Like as a father, how are you going to leave your wife and your son around to be dealing with this torture? You're supposed to
Hmm.
be there to protect them and to work in the fields and do all that. So you had this impossible choice to make. So being on that plantation, it was like, wow, that was crazy. And as far as loving, we shot in Richmond, Virginia. Shout out to Jeff Nichols being able to make that happen. We shot there, and I'm looking at like old photographs and talking to people that were around when they were around and knows their family and hearing that story and realizing that we may not have some of the most influential people in all different mediums in the world had Richard and Mildred Loving not fought
Absolutely.
for interracial marriage. Like, you got to think about how many impactful interracial people we have in this world.
Hmm.
And they may not have existed because it was literally like they were locking your ass up and even some instances death.
Absolutely.
This is the 50s.
I was about to
Not
say
like
this
this is
wasn't
like the
this wasn't a
1800s.
long time ago.
This is the 50s.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm like, that's wild to think yo, just because you are with somebody, and it wasn't, it was actually, it wasn't just black and white. They highlight that, but it wasn't just black and white. It was, you know, black and they didn't want blacks with nobody, Spanish,
I
Asian,
was gonna
whatever,
say with no one.
with no one.
Yeah.
So it was like male or female. So I'm sitting here like, man, that was crazy. And having that cast, man, let me tell you,
Beautiful cast.
oh my gosh, man.
Beautiful cast.
Ruth Nega is,
Ruth is on another level.
Will Dalton and I, who was a co-star of mine, Will Dalton was on Loving with Me. Shout out to my brother Will Dalton, man. That's
Yeah.
my guy. We call her Ruth the Truth because she's wildly, amazingly skilled at what she does.
Yeah.
And shout out Terry Abney too, as well, who
Mm.
plays her sister, Terry Abney, another monster on the screen. So,
Yeah.
I think I learned a lot. Preparation, like I said, preparation came getting on there, looking at the script again, and then seeing these actual places and going, man, I got work to do.
You got work to do. Well,
So
you've
yeah,
done some beautiful work because Detour Entertainment
yeah,
popped out and did its thing, right? And you've done some beautiful industry work and reflections of all of the things. And I know we have to get ready to wrap our show, but
right, right.
when I think of you as, as a filmmaker and that filmmaker eye and that trainer, when did the idea for your own production company kind of begin?
That came. I was at a point where my agent kept sending me thug, 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 because
Mm.
once they found out I have like I'm tatted all up on my arms and stuff. And once people found out, my agent found that out. Oh, well, hey, they got this role for you. He's a crying thug, but now he's a joking thug. But now and I was like, you know what, man, I don't want to be that dude. I don't want to be that actor. No shade against them, but I want to be the actor when people look at my career. I've always wanted the respect of Denzel. I wanted the notoriety of Will, and I don't care if anybody says y'all can still talk about that BS slap. Yeah, it was wrong, but don't get it twisted. That man
Will
held
is
the
one,
summer.
Will is one of
That
the
man, he held the summers down for
absolute.
over a decade.
If
You
it
know what I
was
mean?
not, if people have not watched the first name on the call sheet, Will is the first actor that has allowed you guys as actors to be able to transcend across seas.
And everybody gave him, even Denzel gave him his
Even
flowers in that
Denzel,
regard.
everyone has given him that credit. So
Right. So knock that
life
off.
happens, of course,
Right.
but
Right. Right. So knock it off.
we're
So
still
yeah.
human. Yeah,
Right. And that's so I've always wanted the respect of Denzel. I've always wanted the notoriety of Will, but I've always wanted the versatility of Sam. And
shout
if
out,
you really
man.
look at Sam Jackson's resume, that
Yeah,
man has popped up in things you would have never thought you would have seen him pop up in. And that's what I want people, for me, that's my goal is to say how he went from a slave to a sarcastic district attorney to a second lieutenant in a mob to a pastor, a chaplain.
all of the
Like,
things.
you know
Yeah,
what I mean? Like this
yeah,
dude is Chris is all over the place, and that's when I dived in, I was like, I don't want to be just the actor that's known for just being the superhero, just known for being the pretty boy, if that's the thing, whatever. It's like, yo, he's an actor, meaning you pop him in this is what's going on. So that's where the essence of Detour came from was if I can't get them to give it to me, then I have to find a way to do it myself.
that's it. Well, listen, I was going to say, even on a side note, allegedly, they said Sam Jackson was in the runnings of being Ike Turner. So it was between him and Lawrence Fishburne. And I was like,
I mean,
I said the same thing. I heard that on TikTok the other night. I was like,
But
I
it would have been
mean,
a different, it still would have been dope.
it
It would
still
have
would have
been
been
different,
dope.
but it still would have been dope.
Yeah. So listen, as we wrap our show, I've said this a lot when I do red carpets, when I do interviews, and I love this question because it really makes you think of just all of the work that you've done,
Right,
from Mount Vernon to Hollywood now, and now the work from television and film and independent films and coaching and teaching people and you're directing and being a father, right? You've had a trajectory of a career, ups and downs and challenges and learning lessons and successes and all of
right,
the things.
right.
Chris Green, what do you want your legacy to be?
If I could sum it up best I can, uh, inspirational.
Mm,
I want people to look at the things that I've done in my life, good or bad, and let it inspire them. And I know that sounds weird to say about bad things, but like, not that I've done anything crazy out here to anybody. at least that I know of. I mean, I ain't been on TMZ yet, so but I want people to look at, hey, this is where he, in my opinion, he fell short as a father. Okay, well, if that's what you think, then use that as inspiration to not fall short as a father.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or hey, he was a great father. I love what he did. Okay, use that to do what I did or be better.
Hmm.
I think when I think of legacy, I think of you look at somebody's career, like unfortunately, obviously with the tragic news of Rob Reiner, but you look at all the things that people are saying about him. I mean, not just actors, people
No.
in general, just a good dude. Like they were like, yo, you can't say anything
All
negative
around.
about.
They've
Yeah.
lost. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't say anything negative about this cat. And even if you can, you feel icky about doing it
You
afterwards.
do.
You're
Yeah.
like, "Ah,
Yeah.
but was that really a bad thing?" That's for me where I want my legacy to be for people. For my daughter, I just want, you know, when she talks about her father when I'm gone, I just want her to be able to smile before she's sad. I want her to be like, that was my dad. That's my dad. If she's somewhere and somebody's watching something I've done, oh man, your dad was so cool an actor. Yeah, but he was cooler as a dad. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like that's what I would like to leave for her.
Yeah.
So just those two things, and they sound simple, but I'm finding, man, those are the hardest damn things.
Those are the hardest
The
things.
hardest things to just
Yeah.
be a good for nothing person, as my brother Roy Williams would say, man, be a good for nothing person,
That's
and
it.
and when you think about that phrase, it sounds simple, but it's like, no, don't just go out there every day and be good. And it's hard.
Hmm.
We're human beings. Sometimes you're good, but you're like, all right, I'll put this good fortune out there, you're waiting for something to happen.
Is it
But
received well? I don't know. Is it?
right, right,
All of the things.
right,
Yeah.
right. But just being, just be good, man. But I think that's it. And and continue to run into, people like yourself, man. Your energy. And I mean it 100%. I know I be, in your messages. It don't be on no Hollywood stuff, man. When I see you out there doing what you're doing, man, it genuinely makes me smile. Honestly, brother, it makes me smile because I'm like, you are having so much fun in everything that you're doing. And it's a reminder to me, like, man, I'm over here bitching and complaining. Let me go out there and have some fun. You know what I mean? And
I
so
have
I
to.
appreciate you for that. And I'm sure I'm not the only person that feels that way.
No, 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 no. And I appreciate you and the messages and the love. And I think, and I've said this to a lot of people, right? Like I enjoy my life. I enjoy being present, being intentional. Every top of the year, I always think of what is the word and the mantra that I'm going to live by. And it's always been intention, right? I'm intentional with people. I'm always myself. I show up as myself. I'm always present. And I listen to people. But what I appreciate about you is your heart. And I want to say I thank you for the service that you have given your students. I want to give you the flowers for being a present father and an
Thank you.
understanding father and a learning father, right? There is no playbook that parents are reading over and saying, got it, this is what we're supposed to do. As we figure out life and life changes for us, it changes for her and boys and all of the people in the world, right? But also, I want you to make sure that you continue to get out of that bed, right? Because it's always about just putting your feet on the floor and showing us that the true talent has always been there. We're just waiting on you. Any last words you want to leave with any of your fans, followers, new people? Any last words?
Thank you.
That's it. I want
Thank
everybody to
you.
make sure that they follow Real Chris Greene on Instagram and slide in his DM. Shout out to all of his work. If y'all ask about his work, he doesn't know about his work because he doesn't watch it after he's done with it. So your opinion is your opinion. He don't know. So I want to thank you always. And again,
Thank
thank
you,
you for
brother.
your heart. As we always say on Power 97.5 LA, Power B 97.5 Vegas, and iHeart Radio and the JS Journals. Stay positive, but stay creative. Until next time, thank you for tuning in.